All right. Good.
Rachel's baby is a guest star now. It's awesome.
Yes. Welcome to Queens of the Damned. My baby is a guest star in this episode because we changed our recording night and I don't have a babysitter and his dad's at work. So, if you're listening, sorry for his commentary, but he has a lot of thoughts about Stephen King. A lot of thoughts. He was almost born on Stephen King's birthday. He missed it by 23 minutes. He was born at 45 minutes. He was born at 12:44 a.m. on the 22nd, and Stephen King's birthday was the 21st. So
well, he'll be an anti-Stephen
close.
King. He'll be like the next dark harbinger of what I don't know what I'm going for with that.
Wow.
Oh my god.
No, that'll be awesome. I mean, I meant that as a compliment.
Honey,
Don't you want your child to be the next
okay, I'm just kidding.
seminal horror author that posts pictures of his dog on Facebook?
Of course I do. Of course I do. He watches scary movies with me all the time on Netflix, all throughout my maternity leave. We watched a lot of horror movies. But anyway, okay, so speaking of horror movies before we start, I do just want to say, I don't know if you guys care about the Oscars. I don't think either of you do, but I'm very excited that Get Out, a horror movie, got nominated
Awesome.
for a whole bunch of Academy Awards, which is super rare.
It's really great.
They never take horror movies seriously, and Get Out is a great movie for everyone who hasn't seen it. I don't think it's probably going to win, but
I bet it'll win something.
still really good. It's definitely worth seeing. I think it stands the best chance. He's eating my hair. I think it stands the best chance at winning Best Original Screenplay. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not going to win Best Picture. It's definitely not going to win Best Director. Definitely not going to win Best Actor. So screenplay is really, I think, their best shot. Not that they don't deserve those other awards, but it's not going to win.
Well,
Well, The Shape of Water was up for a lot of nominations too, wasn't it? I know that's not.
Yes,
really
Guillermo
horror,
del
but-
Toro, I'm pretty sure, is going to win Best Director, but I do not think it's going to win Best Picture.
I haven't seen it yet, but God, I really want to.
It's really good, and yep,
I've only heard good things about it.
it's really good.
So Damian's only heard good things too.
There's some things that happen in it that are a little weird, but
Oh, I'm
it's a good
sure.
movie.
I mean, judging just simply by what it's about, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was listening to this other podcast called Keep It, and one of the hosts said that, so Octavia Spencer's in the movie, she plays like the best friend of the main character, and that her entire role is basically asking the main character over and over, girl, you fucking that fish. And it's true. It's true. That is basically the plot of the movie.
I really can't wait to see this movie.
Amazing. Oh my god.
It's really, I mean, it's a beautiful movie. Don't get me wrong.
When you
it's
think about the
beautiful,
premise, it's fucking weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interspecies love. But it's a good movie. It's very pretty. And all of his movies are good. Hi, Bubby. Hi.
That was so cute.
Honey, you're sticking that bottom lip out.
He's like, get
No
on with
cries.
it, Jesus.
Here, say hi. I know. It's like, I don't care about The Shape of Water, Mom. I didn't see it. I
Oh.
wasn't invited to the movies.
Oh.
I wasn't invited.
Uh-oh, somebody's gonna get upset. I feel it coming on. Do you feel it? I feel it. There's a storm of brewing.
He's just being fussy. He's just being fussy. Okay, so our topic now that we've talked about Get Out and having sex with fishmen and my baby.
Oh my god.
Our topic this week is our favorite, I think we all went positive, Stephen King adaptations. Yes, thank you. for that introduction. You are right. Damian has a lot of thoughts about mine. We've chosen The Shawshank Redemption. So The Shawshank Redemption is based on a short story called Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which I've read. I would say the reason that I chose this adaptation as my favorite is because, first of all, I would consider it one of the greatest movies ever made. But, but also, I think that this movie manages to be better than the book, which is rare. And I know that Stephen King feels the same way. Stephen King has said many times this is his favorite adaptation of one of his stories. It took what is a good story and just makes it better. I mean, they keep the plot pretty much the same. I mean, not much has changed from the short story, but it's just so well done. So the movie is written and directed by Frank Darabont, who did the first season, I think, just the first season of The Walking Dead. The best season of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And it stars Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. And it's about this guy, Andy, that's Tim Robbins' character. He's convicted of murdering his wife and her lover, and he's sentenced to life in prison at the Shawshank State Penitentiary. While in prison, he makes friends with this other prisoner named Red, and that's Morgan Freeman's character. And Red is a smuggler. And Red gives him, as a gift, a rock hammer. So, like a hammer that you can use for shaping rocks. And a large poster of Rita Hayworth, hence the name of the short story, for Andy's cell. So, Andy overhears one of the guards complaining about being taxed. And Andy, who used to be an accountant on the outside, offers to help the guard shelter the money. So basically, he's not going to be taxed anymore. And he ends up doing this for several of the guards. And I think he ends up... I should have rewatched it. I didn't. But I think that he ends up laundering money for the prison. The warden of the prison is receiving bribes. And I know, he's going crazy, guys.
That sounded slightly demonic, I'm not gonna lie.
The warden of the prison is receiving bribes, and he helps launder the money. So a bunch of other stuff happens. I'm not gonna do the whole plot. You can watch the movie if you want the whole plot. It's pretty complicated. But 20 years after the start of the movie, they're doing roll call. And Andy is not in his cell. And so they go to the cell and they pull back the poster on the wall. And it turns out that all these years he's been using the rock hammer to escape from the prison. And so while he escapes, after he escapes, he goes to all of the banks that he laundered the money through, and he withdraws all of the money. And he mails, evidence that he has of the corruption at the prison to the newspaper. And he gets away to Mexico. So 20 years after that, Red is paroled. He has a hard time adapting to life outside of prison. And he remembers something that Andy told him to go to this certain city, which he does. And he finds money that Andy has hidden for him and a letter asking him to come to Mexico. And Red ends up violating his parole and goes to Mexico, where he and Andy reunite. And it's a very happy ending. It's a very not... I guess when you think of Stephen King, you don't think of a story like this. It's not scary. There's no horror, there's no sci-fi, nothing. It's just a nice story.
Have you heard that story that Stephen King told about when he went to a grocery store? Some lady, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but some lady said that she recognized him or something, and said that he told her who he was and everything, and she was like, oh, I don't like that scary stuff. She's like, I like stuff like The Shawshank Redemption. And Stephen King was like, oh, I wrote that. And she was just like, no, you didn't, and walked away.
That's hysterical. Yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. And I actually find that, for me, my two favorite adaptations of his are this and Stand By Me. Mm-hmm. Neither of which are scary. Neither of which have sci-fi. Because even, you know, like The Green Mile, which is also really great, has, like, that fantasy sci-fi element. Mm-hmm. But for me, my two favorites don't. I'm not sure why this movie, like, this adaptation is so successful, and so many of them are terrible. But somehow this director, writer, Frank Darabont, he just knew what to do. I know that Stephen King did not think this was going to be a good movie. I think he told Frank Darabont, you're crazy for wanting to buy the rights to this. Like, it's not going to make a good movie, because I mean, the short story is pretty much told from Red's point of view, and it's just kind of his thoughts almost on Andy and the things that Andy is doing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be hard to translate into film, but this movie's great. It was nominated for quite a few. We've already talked about the Oscars. It was nominated for, let me look, 7 Academy Awards, which is the most for a Stephen King film. For Best Picture, Best Actor for Morgan Freeman, Best Adapted Screenplay, and then some tech awards. It didn't win any, of course. I don't know what won that year. I almost want to look, because I feel like it wasn't deserving. I'm looking it up. Oh, it was Forrest Gump. Hell no. I hate that movie.
Oh, why?
I fucking hate it. I hate it. Tom Hanks is great, of course. His performance is great, but I hate that movie. I hate it. Shawshank Redemption should have won that year. I feel safe in saying that. But yeah, that's my favorite adaptation. It's better than the story. It captures the spirit of the story, which I think a lot of Stephen King adaptations don't. I think a lot of them are so busy, and maybe the reason it works so well is because it's not scary. Because I feel like a lot of adaptations get so bogged down in trying to make it as scary as possible that they lose the fact that a lot of his stories, even the really scary ones, are super emotional. Mm-hmm. There's so many, I mean, the characters are so human, and I think a lot of his adaptations lose that because they're so busy just trying to scare you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a lot of the problem with his adaptations, too, is that, like, people want to add in whatever they want. A lot of the better ones are like almost exact translations.
Exactly.
You know? And I don't know why directors aren't starting to see that, because the more movies that come out like that, the more people want to see those adaptations, because they're just so much better. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know why they feel the need to change them so much, because they just aren't as successful.
I mean, you would think that they would understand by now that, like, his books sell for a reason, and it's because they're good.
Right.
And, I mean, of course, some things you have to change when you're adapting something to the big screen.
Right.
But you can't... But, so yeah, like you said, so many of them try and change just fundamental parts of the story. And sometimes it works, like... Well, I don't know what... I don't think anybody's doing 1408. Okay, good, because I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, but 1408 is way different than the story, but it works. It takes, like, the bare bones of the story, and it adds some backstory to the characters where there wasn't really any in the novella, and it makes it better. But that's one of the few, I think, that
I
that's
don't
been
think
able to do
fidelity
that.
is necessarily an issue with adaptations, but like you said, I think like capturing the spirit of the work is what is really missing in a lot of things. They're not understanding what is supposed to be coming across, and like, yeah, it just doesn't work if you're not understanding, like, hey, this is like the essence of this story or this like novel or whatever.
Right. Which I think to me is the issue with The Shining, which The Shining has huge fans. Please don't come after me. I do think it's a good movie. I think it's a really good movie, but I think it's a shitty adaptation.
Yeah.
And I think it's because Stanley Kubrick wanted to take the idea of The Shining and tell his own story rather than tell the story that Stephen King told.
Yeah.
Because he completely misses the point of the book. I mean, which is why Stephen King hates it so much. He totally misses the point.
Yeah.
And, yeah. But, still a good movie. I think.
I don't know. I think The Shining should win some kind of award for worst adaptation ever made. Because
it's a horrible adaptation.
I mean, it isn't even the same thing. That's what annoys me the most about it.
Plot. I mean, it takes the bare plot of the family stuck in the hotel and the kid with his imaginary friend and red rum and all that, and then it goes in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
He has
that
so
was
much
well
to say.
put. Well said. He's like, I did not like that movie. I haven't even seen it, but I know I don't like it because my mom doesn't like it, and she's always right. Huh. Yeah.
Now he's silent. He's like, yeah,
I'm
sure.
not cognitively there yet, but if you want to put that on me, that's cool.
Anyway, so Shawshank Redemption is great. I feel like everyone's probably seen it. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It will make you cry. It'll make you laugh. It will move you.
I saw it just a really long time ago, so I barely remember anything from it, but I know I need to rewatch it.
I haven't seen it in a while either. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while either. I should probably buy it.
I read the book, or the short story, a long time ago. Well, I guess not that long ago. Probably like a couple years. I was in college for a film class or something, and we did the Shawshank Redemption. But I've seen it so many times. I feel like I don't need to see it again because I get it.
Well, and I actually I don't even know what class I was taking. Some college class. We were talking about the effect of, okay, let's not pull that down on ourselves. They were talking about the effect of, institutionalization. And they used that scene where the older prisoner, can't remember his name, Brooks, the guy who worked in the library.
Yeah.
Where he's paroled, but he's been in prison for 50 years.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't know what to do, so he commits suicide.
That's the most depressing part about that movie.
That is the saddest scene.
I remember from seeing it.
That is the saddest scene. That is and then when he plays, and then Andy gets the recording of Marriage of Figaro, and he plays it over the PA system and gets punished. That's such a great scene.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's just so good. Anyway, watch it, guys. Watch the movie. It will move you a lot, and it's really well acted and beautifully directed, and it's great. It's great. Yeah. It's a great adaptation. I mean, read the short story, I guess. I honestly had seen the movie 4 or 5 times before I even got around to reading the short story, which is weird. Usually I'm like, no, I have to read the book before I see the movie. And when I read it, I liked the story, but I agree with Stephen King. It's just, it works better as a movie. I mean, the movie just goes places that the story doesn't.
I picked 11/22/63 for my adaptation, and I mean,
Yay.
it's not a movie; it's a TV miniseries. But
that counts.
I mean, it's truly, god dang it, it's truly incredible. So 11/22/63 is, it's like 850 pages, I think. So it's one of his longer reads, but you know, I know a lot of people say like his really long novels are hard to get through because they have so much character background, but I don't think there was any part of this book that wasn't incredibly interesting. I mean, I never wanted to put it down. I mean, it's 850 pages of just incredible content. I know when this book came out, people freaked out about it, and people still rave about the book.
It was the New York Times best book of the year it came out. I remember that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm, because
That's
it was
awesome.
The only one on their list of like 100 books that I'd read.
Oh.
I was like, oh, it's the only one I read.
Nice. Okay, so 11/22/63 is about a English teacher named Jake Epping. He's 35 years old. He teaches adults in a GED program as well. But he finds out from the owner of a diner that he goes to often, his name's Al, that he has cancer. I mean, just out of nowhere, he has, like, full-blown cancer. Like, he's gonna die soon. And when Jake asks about this, Al just lays everything on him. I mean, it's just insane. He tells him that in his diner, in the closet, there is a portal to 1958 that he calls the rabbit hole. And he actually doesn't tell him. He kind of just makes him go in. And then when he comes back out, he's like, okay, here's what's going on. But it's so much. I mean, like, in the show and in the book, it's like, holy cow. If I got all this information all at once, I'd be like, I need to go lay down for 5 days. This is too much information. Yeah. So Jake, after getting all this, like, he goes back in time and he experiences it and everything. And he goes back a few times to get an idea of what's going on. And he does a lot of test runs. But Al does end up dying quite early on in the book. And he basically, before his death, says to him, I've been going back in time trying to stop the assassination of JFK. And in my time, I got cancer, and so I can't go back and do it again, so you have to do it. You have to go back, and you have to save JFK, because all of these things that have happened since his assassination wouldn't happen, and the world would be so much better, so you just have to do it. And Jake is just completely overwhelmed. He obviously does decide to do it, and he goes back in time to save JFK. So the rules for time travel in this book are that every trip that you take back is only 2 minutes in the present, so you can go back, spend 5 years in the past, and come back and only 2 minutes have passed, so nothing has changed. But once you change something and come back to the present, you can't go back again unless you want a complete reset. So if you screw something up, you can go back to the present and then return to the past and get to do everything again. But Al tells him you have to be really careful of what he considers the butterfly effect. He basically tells him you need to stay hidden and you don't want to be too much of a presence because any small thing that you do could change everything, could completely change.
Can I guess something
people's
here?
lives.
Does it have something to do with the man with the umbrella? Okay, so during the JFK assassination, there was a man with an umbrella on the curb, and he had it open, and it was like not a rainy day, or he was holding it, and so they thought that he was the person who was signaling the assassination, or who actually committed it. So I was thinking about the like stay hidden, you know, sort of thing. So I didn't know if like he put that in there because sometimes you know. Okay, never mind. I was totally off track.
No, that actually that isn't mentioned, but Al tells him when he's the whole time that he's been there, he's basically just been gathering information on Lee Harvey Oswald because he's trying to determine did he do it, did he not do it, with all of the conspiracies out there. And so when Jake goes back, that is like what he does for 5 years is he watches Oswald and his family and everyone around him to see if it was him or if it was somebody else. So he like, I mean, there is talk about like the different conspiracies and stuff, but they aren't, like, a huge part of it, I guess. But when Jake goes back, he ends up, like, just making a home in Jody, Texas. He creates a relationship with a woman named Sadie, and he has all these friends. He's a huge part of this town. So much for laying low.
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the town knows him and loves him. He, like, saves some... Well, okay, I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but, like, he's a huge part of that town. He's, like, a hero in the town. And he basically lives a double life the whole time that he's in the past. He lives one in Jody, where he's a normal, loved member of the community, but then he also has this other life where he follows Oswald. He, for months, lives either underneath Oswald in the apartment below him or across the street from Oswald, recording everything he says and keeping track of everything that's going on. Kind of keep, like, following him sometimes, following people who come to his house and leave his house. But the surveillance doesn't really tell him as much as he needs to know. A lot of it is just like, okay, this person came, this person did this. It wasn't that important. And when it comes to, like, the big moment for him to find out whether it was somebody else, the past kind of gets in the way, which is a massive problem the whole time that Jake is in the past, is that the past does not want to be changed. And it makes it extremely difficult for him to do anything the whole time that he's there. Towards the end of the book, he ends up getting just beaten into a coma. So that's a major part of it, is that the past is just absolutely not wanting to let him do anything. But I'm sorry, I don't know if I should give away the end. Rachel, what do you think? Should I say what happens in the end? Should I not say what happens in the end?
I mean, I always feel like, listen, the book has been out for at least, like, 5 years, and the TV series has been out for, like, 3 years. Like, if you haven't seen it yet, it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and
that's what I always feel like. I mean, it's been long enough, like...
Yeah.
I mean, because it's not, like, a huge twist. It's not, like, oh my god... It's not like Gone Girl. Where, like, if someone gave away the twist, even though it's been out for a while, I still think that person would be a dick.
Yeah.
But...
No, I agree. I mean, the ending is pretty much what you would well, not the ending, but the, you know, big climactic part of it is what you would expect. It is Lee Harvey Oswald in the book, and Jake arrives just in time to stop him. Like, just as he's about to shoot Kennedy, he arrives and he stops him. But at the expense of his girlfriend, Sadie. Sadie ends up getting shot by Oswald and dies. Which is heartbreaking. It's one of the hardest parts of the book because they were very much so in love, and he was going to take her back to the present with him, and she was so excited about it. But yeah, and so after that happens, Jake ends up going back to the present, and it's this wasteland, pretty much. I mean, the world is just in ruin for the most part. It's like there's a plague. It's dangerous to be outside. I mean, it's just... And Maine, I think, is part of Canada.
I think so, yeah.
Maine becomes part of Canada and everything. Hillary Clinton is president at some point, I guess. But it's this absolute wasteland. And so he determines that he has to reset everything. And so he goes back, and he decides he originally was going to spend time with Sadie again. He was going to go back and he was just going to relive his time with Sadie, but he decides in the end not to do that. And then I don't want to see the very, very, very last thing that happens because it's like one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've read. So you just have to read the book or watch the show to find out what happens, because the ending is exactly the same in both of them.
It's really good.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Is it a kind of
broke my
like
heart.
morality tale about don't fuck with time? Like, you're basically...
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it that the show doesn't really talk about as much is, like, in the book, it's less of, this all happened because of JFK. Like, that's not the reason that the world went so bad. It's because people kept fucking with the timeline, and the universe could not handle it anymore. But in the show, it's more of a JFK did not solve your problems. JFK made your problems worse. You know, so they kind of have different meanings to them. The book goes much more into the whole, there are timelines every time that you go back. There's like a different string of reality. And there are these men that they call the yellow card men in the book. And they remember all of these realities. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's a really heavy book once you finish it. It kind of makes you think, okay, I don't need to worry about the past. Things happen for a reason, and I'm fine. I don't need to change anything because it just, I don't know. It's scary.
Well, and I remember reading when it came out that for people of Stephen King's age and, you know, my mom's age, that it's a different experience reading it because when Kennedy died, it was just something that was not just life-changing, but world-changing. Mm-hmm. And for them, that's such a pivotal moment in history that I think a lot of people of that age, if they could go back in time, they would try and prevent his assassination because it just was so devastating. So I think that it's definitely a different experience reading it if you lived through the Kennedy assassination and you remember it than those of us who obviously, you know, only know about it from history.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could see that. But when I was looking around, I found an interview with the writer of the TV miniseries. Well, actually, let me talk about the TV series real quick. So it was a miniseries that debuted in 2016 on Hulu, and it had 8 episodes. It was written by Bridget Carpenter, and Stephen King was also involved in writing the miniseries. And I think originally she said in an interview it was only supposed to be like 4 hours, and it ended up being 9 hours, I think, in the end. And she said, I could definitely have made it 10 hours if I wanted to add more, like, because there was just so much that she wanted to add but couldn't, because she was trying to compact it as much as possible. The executive producer was J.J. Abrams, and Franco does some writing. James Franco does some writing, and he's also a producer. So I thought this was interesting. When Bridget Carpenter was asked, why in your mind does a guy like Jake, who, even if he had been divorced, decided, I'm going to now devote years of my life to Al's insane quest? So basically, like, why does he do this? Why would he decide...
Keep talking.
Okay.
Keep talking. Sorry, keep talking. Keep going.
Okay. So basically, like, why would he go back? Why would he spend 5 years to save JFK? And she responds with, it's totally an insane quest. I think it speaks to my desire to want to do a thing that matters. And when you're somebody who has a job like a teacher, a job which arguably maybe matters most, but it doesn't feel like it to any teacher, that's drudgery. That's hard work. And I just thought there is something of the kind of wishful hero, I think, in everybody. And I think that's in Jake. I think it does awaken something. It's crazy. It doesn't really make sense, and it's all theoretical. It's a complete theory, and you're buying that it might work. And I love the idea that he has a wish to make a bigger impact than he thinks he's making, so that's why I think he does it. I thought that was a great explanation of it, just simply because when you're reading it, you're like, you're just like thrown into this whole theory, and then Jake's like, okay, let's do this. I'm going to go back in time and spend 5 years in the 1960s when I don't know anything about the 1960s. But this whole idea that, like, there's this person inside of us that's, like, wants to make an impact on the world, I think it's a really good way to explain why Jake does it.
What did Stephen King have to say about that interpretation, or has he really provided any sort of interpretation about it?
I didn't do a ton of looking around, but when I was searching around for different interviews and stuff, I didn't find anything of him talking about it. I'm sure there are interviews and everything, but I just didn't see any offhand. But I'm sure he would agree, because that would be like the only explanation, because it really is, it really does feel like out of nowhere he's just like, yes. There are a lot of things in the book and the show that you just have to accept, because he tells Sadie that he's from the future, and Sadie's just like, okay. you know, and you just kind of have to accept it. Like,
that's not usual.
All right, that's fine. I don't know
novels,
if I would believe it, but
that's interesting.
Yeah.
When, you know, you overcome that trope of, like, no one ever believes you when something extraordinary happens, and you can just move on with it.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was really telling of the closeness of their relationship, because they had a lot of faith in each other, and Sadie always had a feeling throughout the book that he was different, that there wasn't something right about him. She thought he was an alien at one point. Like, she asked him, "Are you from another planet? Like, what are you?" So, I mean, it isn't really out of nowhere that she accepts it, but it still feels a little bit like, all right, we're just gonna take it. Like, she's just gonna accept it, and it's gonna be fine. Yeah, but the show is actually really great, because there aren't very many differences. The relationship between Jake and Sadie is really great. It's very similar to what they have in the book. It's not exactly the same. There are some things that they had to take out just for time, because, I mean, it's an 850-page book. The biggest thing that they did was that they made a minor character in the book into a sidekick for Jake. I think this character died in the beginning of the book. Like, he wasn't that important, but they turned him into a sidekick, which normally would bother me, but in this case, I think it made it more exciting as a show, because a lot of the book is just, like, Jake sitting in his apartment by himself, listening to all this stuff going on, and it's told only from his perspective, and so I think it would have been kind of boring if they didn't add somebody like that into the mix. So I think that was a really smart move. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I think it was such a great adaptation, and even if you haven't read the book, the show is amazing just on its own.
No,
I mean,
I have not
have you seen
read
it?
the book nor seen the show.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe you haven't seen the show. It's so good.
But it's a very
so good.
highly requested book
And
that everyone wants to read, so...
Yeah.
And I just knew it was vaguely about the
you can...
Kennedy assassination, so I didn't know there was that time travel element in it.
Yeah.
Elephant. Jesus. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Well, when people ask me, like what kind of book it is, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm like, sci-fi, fantasy.
Stephen King's always about genre bending. And
I don't
know. Classifying something as a genre. So he just does whatever the fuck he wants. And then, booksellers put it in the section they feel is appropriate.
I don't know where they put this book, actually. They probably
Sci-fi.
put it with just in fiction in general, is my guess, but I don't know. But it's great. It's really great. Rachel, do you have anything you want to say about 11/22/63 since you've read it?
Just a basic... Sorry.
I loved it, and I loved the miniseries. I thought it was great. I thought it was well acted. I thought it was well directed, well written. It was a really good adaptation. I mean, that was definitely one where, maybe you guys already said this, but they did have to simplify the plot. Mm-hmm. But just because the book is so big, I mean, there's no way... It would have to be like 20 hours long to adapt the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like they hit all the important parts. I feel like James Franco was really great in it. Mm-hmm. And did he direct it too?
No, I think he wrote some of the episodes, though.
Okay. Well, he was really good in it. It was really well done. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And I loved the book. I don't know if it's one of his books that I would necessarily... constantly revisit just because it's like really big, but
it's so much
really long.
It's so much to take in.
I'm a really fast reader, and it took me a long time to read that book.
Yeah,
just because, like you said, there's so much to take in. But it's great. It's a wonderful book. I would put it up there with some of the best that he's ever done.
Yeah. Well,
for sure. When
I finished it, I was kind of rethinking the Dark Tower series as Stephen King's magnum opus, because I'm kind of wondering if it's this one, because it really is a masterpiece. The historical accuracy of that book. I mean, it just, like, destroyed me. I couldn't even believe it. I can't imagine all of the research that he had to do. I know he said that he went to Texas and visited the apartment that it was either the one that Oswald stayed in or the one below it. It was one of those two. And that was how he described, like, that's how he figured out how to describe the apartments. Like, he went above and beyond. Yeah. Just insane. Yeah. I can't even believe it.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder, I guess, I've never read an interview with him necessarily talking a lot about the book. But like I was saying earlier, I mean, the Kennedy assassination is such a big thing for people of that generation that I wonder if that's what inspired him to write it.
I'm sure it is. Well, and I thought it was pretty incredible of him to, instead of, he could have made it into like, look, we saved JFK and now everything is great. But instead he didn't. He turned it into like, are you sure that you would want to do this? Because you don't know what could happen. I thought that was really great.
Exactly. That saving JFK seems like a great idea, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I highly recommend both the book and that's one where definitely read the book and watch the miniseries. Don't just watch the miniseries because you will miss out on a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I agree. But it's a good adaptation.
And I was really worried that, like, I was missing out on something since I had seen the miniseries before I read the book. But it just, I don't know, it felt like a whole new experience. Even though they're not that different, it just feels like so much more. Like, yeah. It wasn't ruined for me at all, which was awesome.
No, definitely not. I mean, the miniseries definitely has to condense.
Yeah.
A lot. But I think they do a really good job. I think they hit all the important parts of the book. They get the message of the book across, I think. And so to me, that's what's important. And they stay true to the characters.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really great. You should read and watch
Eventually,
it, Nikki.
I'll get around to
you
it.
Should.
I just bought Sleeping Beauties because a used copy came into work, and it's like, I used it to prop up the rabbit cage the other day so she wouldn't get out. It's, like, huge. So.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It's good. I read it. It's good.
I still haven't read it. I'm so mad at myself. Like, when his stuff comes out, I buy it the next day or the day of, and I start reading it. And this is the first one I haven't done that with. I'm really angry with myself.
I put myself on the waiting list at the library once they start letting people go on the list, which is usually like a couple months before it's released. So I usually get them pretty quick, but
it'll be a while before I get around to it. But
I can't wait to read it.
Still have it. So.
Well, if you want to borrow my copy of 11/22/63, you can borrow it because I know you're not going to hurt my books.
It's same. It's like a symbiotic relationship here with book lending. We don't loan our books out to anyone, but like I lent her a book. It came back okay.
No.
Yeah. Now I know. She knows that. Yeah. She can
exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be careful.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of long books,
all right.
I chose it as an adaptation. Probably my favorite Stephen King adaptation so far. But I just thought it was something that we hadn't talked about in depth yet, so thought maybe we should include it in this episode. I did just finish the book, so I saw the recent adaptation first. I saw it twice in theaters, and then I read the book over winter break. It took me pretty much all of winter break, and I pretty much sat indoors and ate Chinese food and read it all of winter break. I was in a really dark place, though, by the time I got done with that book. Which, usually happens by the time I'm done with the Stephen King book. But, so...
Did I tell you guys I, cried for an hour after I finished that? I read it until, 2 a.m., and I just sat in my room in the dark,
I got a little misty
crying.
at the end of that one. Yeah.
No.
Destroyed me.
So the book, I did like... I'm not going to do a recap of... I was saying a disadvantage of talking about the recent adaptation is that we only have half of the whole, so we can't really talk about the... I mean, in case you don't know, the book is... it's really divided up into it's kind of like layered and sandwiched with the protagonist as kids, and then the antagonist, oh my god, the protagonist as adults, the antagonist. But with this, the movie, the first part is them as kids, and then the second part is going to be them as adults, so it's not temporally confusing in any way, but the book is super jumpy, goes back and forth. So, because we don't have the adult part to talk about with the book, we kind of have to guess about how they're going to adapt the second part of it. But anyway, I really did like this adaptation. After having read the book, I'm kind of glad they set it in the 80s instead of in the 50s. But I think it's because I read this article that was talking about how it is a baby boomer hero story where, like, the baby boomers thought they solved everything. They got rid of racism. They got rid of violence. And then now they're middle-aged in this era. And it's not solved. And it's come back. And I can send you
I've never
the
thought
article.
Of that.
And they talked about the way that the
Wow.
baby boomers overcame the fact that it wasn't gone was by forgetting. By pretending it wasn't there, by just erasing it from consciousness, which is what happens when
That's interesting.
you forget about it after you defeated it. So I know
That just
when I
blew
read
my
that,
mind.
it's okay.
Sorry.
So the article,
Go
I
ahead.
should read it. It's by Susan Love Brown. I have it right here. It's called Baby Boomer Mythology and Stephen King's It, an American Cultural Analysis. It's not super dense. I know that sounds kind of intimidating to people who don't read academic articles. It's super straightforward. It's like super easy to follow. So you can find it on Google Scholar. I'd recommend anyone who's interested in that premise to read it. But I liked the fact that they said it in the 80s. That really, the beginning of this article says, it begins with a quote, "Every age thinks its battle is the most important of all." So the story can just go over generations and generations. It's all about defeating our particular monster. I loved that, and I loved how different the story is when you read it in the book versus seeing it in the 80s. I'm looking at my notes. I wrote, Stephen King can make the cheesiest stuff work most of the time. In the book, there were some things that I thought were just ridiculous that kind of undercut the scariness of it. Like Richie being chased by a statue of Paul Bunyan. While that would be scary in real life, it's kind of stupid in a book. And I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that, or if they're going to go with it. So there were other moments like where the bugs came out of the fortune cookies and when they were adults in the Chinese restaurant, and I was kind of like, I'm sure they'll think of something. But I thought in the adult
Interesting.
adaptation, they're gonna have to change some things up, like a lot. But there was that awkward orgy we have to talk about too. Okay, I thought it was fine. I was just like,
I wish
okay,
we
like,
didn't have to.
I think it should. I don't know.
I
I
don't
want to say
think we
something about
do.
it. I mean, whatever. It's fine. Like, it didn't bother me. I'm kind of glad I didn't have to see it in the movie, but it didn't make me morally outraged or anything. I felt like Stephen King was trying to go, okay, like, this is a huge universal thing, and so, traditionally in rituals, to gain power, we have to connect, and, like, it's a super old pagan thing. I mean, whatever. It didn't really, like, make me angry, but then again, I don't have to see it,
My problem with it is that that's Beverly's only big contribution. She doesn't do a whole lot else. I mean, I know, and of course they changed this for the movie, which is one of my huge problems with this movie. But in the book, she is the one that shoots Pennywise, right? Because she's the only one that
The
knows how to
slingshot.
shoot a gun, or she's
Yeah.
the only one that has good aim, or
It's
whatever.
the slingshot. Yeah, she's the only one who can actually use the slingshot.
Right. So, but in the book, her only big contribution is
Right.
having sex with everybody to bring them closer. And it's just like, you couldn't think of anything else for the girl to do.
That's pretty
Yeah.
bad. And
That's
I
all
also
you could think
I'm
of.
sorry.
Yeah. See, and that's...
In the film,
No,
they
go ahead.
Also,
Go ahead.
kind of, she got kind of shafted there too because she ended up being the damsel in distress at the end. She was the motivator for the men to go, or the boys to go
That
out
was-
and
Yeah.
save Beverly.
She and the only... Oh my god, I had some issues with this movie, but go ahead. I really liked it. I loved it.
Yeah, there were issues.
But I had some issues.
Okay, I just want to say... I do want to say, though, like, because the whole damsel in distress thing did bother me at first, but I think, like, it was one of the writers or the directors or somebody like that came out and said that they did it because Beverly was, like, the critical person in their group. Like, she was the one who kept everyone together, and that was why they did that, was because it needed to be Beverly for everyone to come together again. And so I think they were trying to make her, like, this super important character in the group, but it did, I don't know how I feel about it, because I get what they were trying to do, but it does still bother me, because she wasn't that character in the book.
Well, and what super bothers me is that, so originally this movie was written by Cary Fukunaga, who was going to direct both parts. And then he ended up dropping out because he got into a fight with the studio about budget or something. And so the guy who ended up directing it took over. And the guy who ended up directing it rewrote parts of the script. And Cary Fukunaga's script leaked online after the movie came out. And okay, they did still cut the orgy, which is good. But Beverly was not the damsel in distress. Mm-hmm. They did not take away, which is I'm sorry, Nikki, I don't mean to, like, step on your thing. But this is, my other big issue was Mike, who gets totally shafted, who is an extremely important character in the book, and who's the historian of the group, and is the one who figures out what Pennywise is, and they take that away from him and give it to one of the white kids.
Yeah.
And in the original Fukunaga script, that doesn't happen. So why would they change it? Why take the one girl and the one black character and take away their important moments and make them lesser just to boost up all of the white boys?
They kind of, like, Ben was the architect, and he had valuable things to put forth already, and a really interesting story when he was an adult, so why did they have to make Ben the historian? You know, I mean, it was already it was already
Right.
integral
Really strange.
to the plot that Ben was the architect, so, and that Mike was the historian.
Well, I almost wonder if it has something to do with the fact that, like, when Ben was a kid in the books, he was always in a library, you know? So I almost wonder if they did it because they were like, is this going to be confusing? With the fact that Ben is always in the library, and then we have this other kid that, like, knows everything. But, I don't know. I don't feel like that's a good enough excuse.
It's definitely not. And I think it says something that Cary Fukunaga is not white. And the guy who ended up writing and directing it is white.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier when you're white to sympathize with the white characters because you see yourself in them. He couldn't see himself in Mike's story of racism.
Yeah.
He couldn't see himself in that story, and instead of being a good writer and putting himself in Mike's shoes, he was like, but I can, I mean, this is just me theorizing, but I can identify with
And
Ben.
he probably, I mean, if that's the case, I'm sure he didn't do it consciously either. And that was, like, just under the surface.
No, I don't think he did.
You
I
know.
don't think it was malicious. Exactly. That's just human nature. It's human nature, and it's just too bad because... And I know what he wants to do with Mike in the sequel.
Well, you know, I will say that in
I
the
hope it doesn't
book-
happen.
What does he want to do?
He wants to make him a drug addict.
Oh, I think you told
the
us
only
that.
way
God.
he can deal with remembering Pennywise is to be like a heroin addict, which so you're going to take the one
of
black
his
character.
Oh.
You're going to take the one black character and you're going to make him a drug addict. Like if that happens, I can't deal with it. And I did like this movie. I sound like I hated it, but I actually really enjoyed it.
In the book, though, I mean, this article
was really
brought up something
good.
interesting that it's still problematic with the way they deal with Mike in the book because as adults, Mike is injured. He's down for the count. He is not the person who ends up dealing with it at the end. He's a bystander. And she said that this could be perceived as, okay, the white people started this shit, now we've got to finish it. But it's also, like, he's not valuable anyway. He's just there, you know? And then, oh, well, he can't partake in the final battle. You know, he's out. So, I'm interested to see how they deal with that, too. Because, and I don't know, there were some pretty problematic things in this book as a whole. It was the 80s when he wrote this. There's that whole
totally.
Embarrassing thing with Richie's accent.
He was on a lot of
Didn't
cocaine.
need to be in there. And, yeah, it was there. So,
Yeah.
it's disappointing. Yeah.
I mean, Stephen King was on
and
a
also,
lot of cocaine when he
I know
wrote
we use
this
this
book.
excuse a lot, but living in a
lot.
different time where people weren't, quote unquote, as sensitive about things like this. But, I don't know. Yeah.
And again, it's hard for Stephen King I can see where it's hard for him to relate to a black character and say, you know, maybe this isn't okay. Maybe this wouldn't be okay. But it's because he's not black.
Yeah.
And he's not a woman. And so with the group sex scene being like, maybe this isn't okay. And then as an adult, what's her, like, character defining trait?
And abused.
She gets raped.
Yeah, and you know, that's not something I noticed.
And abused. And it's like, that's it? That's all you
I should
have
have
for the
noticed
female
that it's like,
character?
okay, so you're saying that Beverly as a woman is being abused by this awful person as an adult and was abused by her father as a child, but yet you're still making her defining trait her sexuality. So, what does that say about not just the situation she's in, but society as a whole? Like,
Well, and because that's a quick way. That's a shortcut way to get an audience to sympathize with a male audience to sympathize with a female character.
Yep.
Is you have her get raped, and then they all feel bad for her and they want to protect her.
Okay, I'm gonna. Chainsaw, she says yes. So we need to have the
She
men
does say
sympathize
that.
with this female horror narrative victim, and this is how we do it. We traumatize her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not just in horror. I mean, you find it in stuff like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That's a quick way for you to, which I actually did like that book, but that's a quick way for you to feel bad for Lisbeth.
Yeah.
Is to be like, well, look, she was horrifically raped. And so now when she's going to get this revenge on the guy that raped her, we're all on her side and we all want her to win now. So it's a lazy writing technique, and it happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, not to go too far off topic, but a friend of mine texted me a while ago about, like, the new Tomb Raider game, because apparently there was a lot of problems with the fact that Lara Croft got raped, and he was asking me about it, and I basically gave him the whole spiel that you guys gave about that book, and he was just kind of like, eh.
Well, and what's so funny is the creators of the video game, when they asked, when they were talking about what the plot was going to be before it even came out, that was the reason they gave. Was, well, we want the male players to be able to want to protect her.
Oh my god.
Trying
So
I
we're
didn't
gonna
know
have
that.
her get
You're
raped.
wrong.
Yes.
Male protectors.
I'm not even kidding.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he was, like, giving so much of an argument, like, but she's, like, strong, and she protects herself. I'm like, it's because she's the main character. Like, she has to be
You're not gonna
powerful.
make
She's the
her
main
get
character.
murdered.
Representations of rape to disappear from fiction because I think it's relevant, and I think, there's the Me Too movement. It's happened. I mean, sexual assault has happened to almost all of us, and so the fact that it's in a narrative
Of course.
is that uncommon. I guess it's just the way you use it as a narrative tool that is the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's
exactly.
It's the reason it's there and how it's portrayed and stuff like that. Go ahead.
No, all I was gonna say is my big thing is, does it have a narrative purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Would Girl with the Dragon Tattoo have worked if Lisbeth had not had that horrific rape scene? Of course it would have.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with the plot overall. We know that she was abused as a child. You find that out in the sequels. That's fine. We could have still done that and not had the horrific, graphic anal rape scene, which is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's graphically described, and it's graphically done in both movie adaptations of it.
Jeez.
It didn't need to be there. The book would have worked without it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, there are books that wouldn't work without it. And then it's fine, because then it has to do with the plot. As long as it's well done, it's necessary for the plot to move forward. But lots of times, like with It, to bring us back on topic, it's not necessary for Beverly to have been... it could have been necessary for her to be abused as a child, and then, of course, it makes sense that as an adult, she would end up in an abusive relationship because it's all she knows, but he doesn't get into that.
Yeah.
It's just, this is something that's happening to her, and now you can feel bad for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But I
And,
did
you
like
know,
the
I
movie.
think we have this discussion a lot where all of us, I think, believe that a piece of whatever it is, a movie, a poem, a work of fiction, can be problematic. You can still like it. You know, you can... It's just...
Yeah.
Life is gray areas. It's not black and white. And you need to pick some stuff out. Say this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong. But what else is valuable? I don't know. So...
Right.
I don't know, but I'm reading on Wikipedia right now that one of the people they considered for the role of Pennywise was Tilda Swinton, and now I'm, like, actually livid that did not happen. Like, Bill Skarsgård was great, but I'm, like,
I don't know who
really
that is.
angry. Did you
What's
see...
the last
What
name?
has she been in recently?
Oh, here
Tilda
it is.
Swinton.
You
I
just
don't know
need
who
to
that
see her
is.
face. Yeah.
Oh, I know who she is.
She's amazing.
I know who she is. Okay.
She's amazing, and now I'm, like, actually angry that she did not play Pennywise.
I'm not.
She
Like,
would've
I'm
been
obsessed
great.
with Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. I think he's phenomenal.
Oh, I think he's great, but
God.
I just want her... I just would have loved to see... They just need to release,
With
like,
her.
an alternate cut, where they just green screen her in.
God.
No, she would have been great, yeah.
Oh, man.
She would have killed it.
Yeah.
But, no, but Bill Skarsgård, to me, was the biggest highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was really skeptical about his casting, because he's so beautiful in real life. I was like,
They did the
why?
same thing
What
with
are they
Heath
going to do
Ledger.
with this?
You know, that's kind of
And
an
that he was
unpopular
great.
They
opinion.
did the same thing with Heath
Huh?
Ledger. Oh, he's not going to make a good Joker. You know. I don't know. Put him in clown makeup, see what he can do.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah,
know, a lot of people
yeah.
think that Bill Skarsgård is not attractive in real life.
Those
find
people
him
are
very
blind.
attractive.
I
He's
know.
not conventionally
I'm sorry.
great by
Definitely.
any means.
But,
He's a little weird, you know.
His family
yeah.
is like the most beautiful, attractive people. The whole family is good looking.
Yeah.
Even his dad, who's also an actor, I find him to be very handsome.
That's not Bootstrap Bill, is it?
They're just...
I haven't seen
It
him without
sure
the barnacles
is.
on his face, so need to...
Yeah, me neither.
Oh, you've never
Oh, I
seen Mamma
have.
Mia?
Yeah, never mind. I just remember him prominently with
He's in Mamma
barnacles on his face and like a starfish, just right here over his eye. No.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. But yeah. Yeah, no. To me, he was the highlight of the movie, and he was a really pleasant surprise.
I love that they were originally going to have so much, like, so many scenes with stunt doubles and everything, and Bill Skarsgård was pretty much just, like, no. Like, I can do these weird
he took
things.
Lessons
Don't
from a
worry.
Contortionist, I hear, and
He's so funny.
The scene where he comes out of the
Yeah.
refrigerator or whatever, it's all him. Like that weird thing he does.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I did hear about that. And then when I watched it after, I was like, what the fuck?
well, because I thought
Who
there was
is
no
this
way
guy?
that was not edited or in some way made to look weirder than it actually was. Nope, it was just weird. He just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So,
He's crazy.
As far as book to movie, I don't know, there were a couple of things that were in the book that were really striking that I don't think would have worked in the film, and one of them is the bird. Like, Mike had the bird following him,
Oh, yeah.
and he was out there.
That was a
out there
stressful
in the ruins
moment
of the
for me.
ironworks and
in the book.
everything, and there's this massive bird that's trying to kill him, and for me, that's a moment that in the movies I would have sighed and waited for it to be over, but in the book I just saw it, like,
Oh, yeah.
like he really brought me to that moment. And I can't remember, there was another one too that really worked, and there were some that did not for me, like when Beverly goes to her father's apartment and sees the witch. That was an awkward moment for me. And I found myself, like, actually laughing aloud. So the book kind of, like, took me on a weird ride where I felt like I was laughing in inappropriate moments and that I shouldn't have been laughing at. I don't know. I thought the movie kind of sustained this level of fear, and you knew where you were supposed to laugh, and you knew where you were supposed to be scared. And the book kind of confused those two things. But, again, written in the 80s, so maybe a different horror aesthetic back then. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of my favorites of his books.
Yeah. Like,
And
do
it's
you
also
remember those
huge.
moments? Do you remember what your reaction was during those? Or is it just me? I don't know.
To an extent. I mean, I read this book. I actually just got it for Christmas. Because it was one that I didn't own. Because it, like, never comes into the bookstore. So I bet I read this book, like, 10 years ago when I was, like, 20. Maybe even younger. So there's a lot of little details of it that I just don't remember. I mean, it's so big, and it's been so long that I just... And I haven't slept in months, so there's a lot of things that I just... Probably once I start to reread it, though, it'll all come flooding back.
It's just fresh in my mind because I just read it, so I'll probably forget a bunch of stuff eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't have any of the scenes where I thought it was
Cheesy.
I don't know. Yeah, for me, it wasn't that experience. Like, I think usually those moments were things like, if I stepped back and I was thinking about it, I'd be like, that's strange. But in the moment, for me, all of those situations with it were stressful and made me really anxious, regardless of what they were. So I don't know. Like, I do remember the bird scene and, like, thinking to myself, this is the weirdest fucking thing. There's a giant bird chasing him. Why am I so stressed out about this?
Yeah.
Because it's a really weird concept, but it's really scary, you know, and I feel like he does that a lot in his books. There's stuff that when you step back from it and you think about the idea, you're like, really? Like the, I always think of the hedges in The Shining as an example for that.
I was just about to say, the hedge animals.
And that scene with the hedges in The Shining scared me probably the most in any of his books that I've read. And it's just like, they're hedges, you know?
But when I picture it in my mind, it looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when you're reading it, you're right. The Shining is probably his scariest book for me.
Yeah.
And when reading that scene was terrifying, but when I picture it, I'm like, that looks lame.
It looks so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this little, like, hedge bunny, like, hopping over. I mean, like, it sounds so stupid.
Yeah,
But in
it
the
does.
book, and you know, I think it was the same for it, I can't really remember, but I remember thinking it was a scary book. So I'm pretty sure if I didn't find most of it lame. But like you, if I had sat back and thought about it, I probably would have been like,
there were
this is
some I
dorky.
didn't even think about.
Yeah.
But
I was caught
But
up
when
in
you're
it,
caught
and
up
the
in
moment,
it-
just like jarred me and took me out of it because it was just there were so many funny things in it, and I was just like, oh my god, is this happening? I'm so embarrassed. It's so hilarious. Because there was like the witch with
Interesting.
with Beverly, and she was talking about all of a sudden everything's made of gingerbread. Oh my god! And the witch is saying, my father ate me up and shat me out. And I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck, Stephen King? And I'm just laughing.
But I think some of that is
I hope
supposed
so.
to be funny. I think definitely a lot of the stuff that Pennywise makes happen is supposed to be darkly funny, like screwed up funny.
Well, he's like Pennywise, the wisecracking, terrifying clown.
I have to say,
that's
that didn't come off
kind of his persona.
so much in the adaptation. It came off sometimes, and when it was supposed to, but mostly when things were happening with Pennywise. It was fucking awful.
Well, they made Pennywise like just a different. I don't know how to explain it. He was kind of a different character in the adaptation, and I actually appreciated it. He was awkward. Like, he was wisecracking, but like it came off in a way that he just didn't know how to talk to humans because he was so different, but he was trying so hard to scare them. And I really appreciated that. And it is different from the book. But like they just kind of gave him a different, I don't want to say different motive, but like a different personality, I guess.
Yeah, and it was unsettling.
Right.
Sometimes funny, but more on the unsettling side of like, something's going on here and it's not right.
Yeah.
No, I really.
Right. And actually, it's so funny because, he always has those little
Remember when they used to like take a cane and pull someone off stage? That's basically what just happened to our podcast. So, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Facebook, YouTube. Okay, yes, and the username is QOTD Podcast. On every one of those. Our WordPress is Queens of the Damned Podcast.wordpress.com, spelled out. You can find some extras from some episodes on there. Patreon, yeah, that too. So, we've been having some trouble getting our scheduling together lately, mostly because I forgot to tell people that I had school. So, but we're resuming our regular bi-weekly schedule now, so thanks for your patience on that. Life gets in the way sometimes. Yeah. So we will see you again in 2 weeks.